Hello, everyone. Welcome to another edition of Rumors versus Facts. My name is Ronnie DeBulsey. I'm joined by Jed May, the recruiting and assistant managing editor. I'm going to give him a new title every week as we go through the season. But he is our recruiting writer, lead recruiting writer, plus our team writer. So Jed wears many hats throughout the week. He's also my confidant and my message board, my idea board. When I get an idea as I'm walking or doing something, I call Jed and go, "Hey, Jed, that's a good idea," and he either shoots it down or says yes. So he's a good sounding board. That was what I was looking for. He's my official sounding board. So always good to have Jed on the show. Jed, that was a hell of a game. How loud was that stadium in the fourth quarter when Georgia defeated Ole Miss for a win over a top 5 team, when Kirby Smart had come out earlier in the week and asked everyone to be louder than it has ever been, and Georgia looked like crap on defense for 45 minutes. Did the stadium get as loud as it seemed on TV?
The fourth quarter did for sure. To be honest, the first 3 quarters I was kind of, not that it matters to me, but disappointed. I just didn't think it was the crowd lived up to what, and it was top 10 game day was there, great weather. Middle of October, all that stuff. But yeah, and like Kirby Smart said after the game, the defense didn't really do their part to get the crowd in it. When they, you get loud to start a drive, and Ole Miss blows down the field, it kind of takes the starch out. But yeah, that fourth quarter where the defense just decided to play like the '85 Bears out of nowhere was as loud as it gets. I thought the stripe out was all right. For what it was, a couple days notice, a fan base that hadn't done that before. It looked all right from the press box. I bet the people on the north side wearing black got a little toasty there in the first half, but no, yeah, that atmosphere in the second half, in the fourth quarter especially was huge. It reminded me. Everybody talks about how the game reminded me of 2013 LSU. But what the crowd kind of did too, because the crowd, when Georgia gets one stop, it was just more of a relief thing, like God, finally, like dreams do come true to get a stop. So yeah, great atmosphere in the fourth quarter, and a great win for a Georgia team that keeps big. You don't really know how, you can't really explain it, but they keep figuring out ways to get the job done.
I was thinking back to that LSU game. And, the way the crowd affected that team. It's tough to be loud and screaming your heart out when you're supposed to be doing that when your defense is on the field. And you're supposed to be getting the other team out of its, cadence, affecting the communication. And after they've driven the field twice, back-to-back 65-yard drives, you're like, oh, okay, well, now we didn't kick the ball out of bounds, so they got to go 75 yards now, and they do it. And then the last one, they do it in 2 plays. And they just chuck it down the field. Or, no, sorry, they only had 3 touchdowns in the half, but they get the ball back, and then boom, 2 plays, they're down there, and you're like, oh, where are those second half adjustments, Kirby? And I could just see myself had I been there and I'm in the fan screaming. I'm like, I can't. I'll try, but it doesn't. I'm not seeing any effect. It's like I'm banging my head against the wall. And my God, that defense is horrible. It is terrible. And yeah, I know that in the fourth quarter they got stops, but let's go back to those stops. You had 3 drives that you stopped them. There were at least 3 bad passes in that. And yeah, as you know, you don't hear the watch along because you're actually working. On the watch along, I lose my mind anytime you see a overthrown pass or a wide receiver drop a pass, and then the defensive back has to do the seatbelt thing and the double thumbs down and the not tall enough bullshit. It drives me out of my goddamn mind. I go crazy because I'm like, you didn't do anything. Didn't do anything. The guy dropped the ball, or he was wide open and it was overthrown. If the throw and catch is there, you were toast. Don't give me the seatbelt BS. I know it looks good on Instagram, but please stop it. And there were a couple plays where I'm like, they finally missed. They were hitting on everything, and then it kind of fell apart. But there were times where I saw great coverage from DeMello. DeMello had down the field on the right-hand side. Dalen Everett gets a pass breakup. Josh Horton knocks the ball down. I think, was it McLeod that had the other one?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
It's like, okay. Oh, this is what we were expecting. Here comes CJ Allen through there. Chris Cole's getting to him. I'm like, okay, you can do this. Why were the first 5 drives? You're standing around with your fingers in your ears like you can't hear what the play call is, and then the last 3 you look like you said, the 85 Bears. I'm like, this is brilliant. And I keep wanting to say, well, it's a talent issue, and it partially is, or it's a scheme issue. Maybe it is, but it almost feels like if the other team gives Georgia a couple mistakes, bad throws. We saw that from Trinidad Chambliss. Those last 3 drives, he had some bad throws, a couple drop passes. It's like success builds. And you were talking about how it changed when they got that one stop. I was actually not begging, but I kept saying, it's kind of like college football offers. Once you get your first offer, all the other offers come in. If you can get a Georgia offer, then you'll get like 30 more. Once they got one stop, it kind of felt the same against Ole Miss when they stopped them Auburn when they stopped them on the goal line. Everything changes, and it almost feels like if these guys can get to that first stop, it's night and day. They didn't score again after that. After the first stop, they didn't score, and Auburn didn't score after their stop.
It
is it coincidence? Is what I'm asking, or is it just?
Yeah, there's certainly something to it, because again, I think if you're a player and you starting from Sunday onward, you say, okay, here's what Ole Miss is going to do, and here's what Trinidad Chambliss does, and here's what these guys do, and you feel like you're prepared, and you come out and get smacked in the face, and you can't get to stop. Ole Miss, they converted their first 5 third downs, but they only had 5 third downs, I think, through the first 3 quarters, which is insane. Like, they weren't even getting into third down most of the time. And
there was a 1st and 17, and they threw it for 18 yards to the tight end.
It's like we say every week, like, you know what's in there. Like, they can do it. You've seen what they've done in the second half against Auburn, those last few drives against Ole Miss, second half against Bama, the middle part of the game against Tennessee. It's how do you do it consistently? And I think another thing too is, so I rewatched the game last night. A lot of people want to blame Schumann, and is he calling things lights out? No, but some of the stuff is on the players. That first touchdown Ole Miss had, Georgia had 4 DBs at the goal line, which was 7 or 8 yards from the line of scrimmage. 7 guys on the line. They bring an all-out blitz. Chris Cole's got a free rush. Glenn Schumann schemes up a free rush for Chris Cole, and he misses him. Trinidad Chambliss steps up. He beats Waylon Wilson to the edge, and it's a touchdown. The 75-yard touchdown. You're thinking, again, it was 4 DBs at the sticks, 10 yards off, 7 guys at the line, and I think they blitzed all of them again. And you're thinking, if you're Georgia, okay, we want him to get the ball out quick, which he did, a short catch, and then rally and make the tackle, and you're in a third medium chance to get off the field.
Trusting my man.
All worked. Yeah, that all worked until Stribling for Ole Miss just dusted Dalen Everett, and then had Ja'Cory Thomas and blew past Ja'Cory Thomas on an angle down the field. So, can you say Glenn Schumann shouldn't have set things up like that? Yeah, I guess, but
he had to do something different.
If Dalen Everett makes that tackle where the guy catches the ball, like that coverage is designed, it's 3rd and 4. And if Georgia, I don't know, if they blitz again and get a sack, whatever they do, it doesn't matter. That's what you're trying to do, is get Ole Miss off the field. And Kirby mentioned it after the game, I guess. Ole Miss is one of the top teams in the country in explosive plays. They didn't, other than the 75-yarder one, off the top of my head, it doesn't feel like they had a ton of explosive plays. It was more matriculating the ball down the field, which at a certain point you're accomplishing your goal. But again, we noticed it in the press box. It's the DBs are playing 7, 8, 10 yards off and bailing before the ball snaps. So when you're Trinidad Chambliss, all you got to do is see that, and it's an easy 6, 7 yards every time. And that's not an explosive play, but if you're giving it up freely, a 14-play touchdown drive and a 4-play touchdown drive are worth the same amount of points. So I don't know.
The idea being, because Mitch and Pot says, why are we giving so much cushion to their receivers? That happened a lot of times, and it was driving us crazy on the watch along show. We're like, what's the idea here? But to your point, Kirby says this is an explosive team, so you're trying to force them to do everything in front of you. And the idea of the 4-play drive, or in their case, a 2-play drive for 75 yards versus a 14-play drive to cover 75 yards is you got to do it right 14 times versus doing it right 4
no
times.
penalties, no drops, no
exactly. And you saw in the fourth quarter when they weren't accurate or they didn't drop a ball, they come off the field. The problem with it's a good philosophy and you keep everything in front of you, but you also increase their potential to make an easier throw and catch. So you toss one out to the flats, exactly what Georgia did on 8 drives. They played off Georgia's defenders. I mean, even Dane Young, and I say this jokingly, even Dane Young called one of the plays. He's like, they're so far away from Zach Branch here, just toss it to him in the flat. And they had something else called. Gunner sees it. He turns and throws it to Zach Branch in the flats. Zach picks up 9 yards. It's like, well, we had something else called, but if you're going to give me 9 yards, I'm going to take 9 yards. And what has happened to Georgia, a couple of these games where they start out slow offensively, they get a penalty on one of those plays, or they drop that pass, or Gunner misses it. And now all of a sudden you're behind the sticks. And the defense is like, look, we played off of them and they still didn't get anything. So, hey, so I get the idea of it. It drives me crazy too, especially I'm with you there when they basically say, hey, it's 3rd and 6 and we're going to stand 7 yards off the line of scrimmage. And there's a slant, or a little hitch that gets exactly what they need to. That particular thing drives me nuts. But once the defense actually starts shutting them down, it looked great. I mean, Georgia didn't even punt in the game. No. And I don't want to go through one of those games again, Jed, because you felt like all the pressure was on Ole Miss at the end there because Georgia finally gets a lead. But at the same time, when your defense gives up 5 straight touchdowns, how much pressure is there on your center, your left tackle, your Y, your Z, your running backs? It's like we have to be perfect too because we are in a shootout right off the bat. And as much as I can rag on the defense, and last week until Monroe Freeland came in, I was ripping the offensive line. This week's offensive line mashed. They were brutal. Go back and look at some of those hits. They were cleaning clocks. They were taking souls. It was a brilliant offensive performance. They never punted. And occasionally they'd have a penalty or they would have a lost yardage play. And that throws off the timing of the drive, and they wind up settling for a field goal. But I think as much as we can rip on the defense for being bad for 3 quarters and being fantastic in the fourth, the offense was fantastic for 4 quarters.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about it in the press box. It seems like at a certain point, this Georgia offense will not convert one of these 3rd downs, have a drop. All the drops aren't even really an issue. It feels like after that was such a talking point last year, one drop on Saturday is maybe the difference between a win and a loss because it felt like they had to score every drive and yeah, they were playing well, but you're like, okay, from what we've seen from Georgia, there will be a moment where, and it happens, right? Like all great offense, like scoring every drive in a game is very rare. At some point they'll have a mistake, and they never did. And you thought there was rewatching the game. There's 3rd downs where Gunner scrambles, or there was the one I think it was in the first half where it was a 3rd and 7. And you're like, oh man, how are they going to pick this one up? And they run it with Chauncey Bowens for 15, 17 yards. It's whatever Mike Bobo dialed up, other than the attempted the weekly Cash Jones incident with the attempted halfback pass, I guess, whatever that was supposed to be. But other than that, I mean, it's you don't ever call a perfect game, but that was pretty close to one because again, that first drive. Yeah, if Noah Thomas doesn't get called for an offensive pass interference, Georgia is well on its way to scoring on that opening drive. I mean, it's they did pretty much whatever they wanted.
Scoring a touchdown.
What did I say?
You said scoring.
Yeah, scored. Yeah, they would have scored. They were on their way to scoring a touchdown on that opening drive.
They still scored though.
Yeah, for sure. So it's again, it's one of those performances that you look at it and it's like, technically they could have done better. Like it wasn't 8 drives and 8 touchdowns, but you can't ask for more than that against an SEC defense for sure.
Yeah, Chris makes a good point. He says that a lot of these issues are, and guy Randy Power says the same thing or something similar, that it's youth on display every week. Chris Cole taking a bad angle there. That ain't it, fellas. I'm sorry. Chris is one of our best commenters on there, and he knows more about football than I will by far. But yeah, Chris Cole missing something, fine. But Ellis Robinson's been here long enough not to get back-to-back personal foul, pass interference calls. Ja'Cory Thomas has been here a while. Some of these other guys have been here a while. Some of the penalties that they make, or some of the errors they make, it's just lack of talent. There's not anybody on this defense you can't throw on. And I know people go, well, Dalen Everett. Dalen Everett gives up passes, especially short stuff. Slant, hitch, when he's got somebody over the top of him, he's fantastic. And he gets called for pass interference calls. There's nobody that you can't throw on this defense. And your linebackers can't cover. Your safeties can't cover. It's, they're young. And that was my thing. And Kirby came out from the beginning. What was day one? He's like, guys, I like when he talks to the media to explain it to us. And he slows down because, we're stupid. He has to talk slower. Mm-hmm. We are really young. 50, 60% of our team is freshmen or redshirt freshmen. And he's right. But you also have a couple true freshmen out there on the offensive line who were throwing people around. You bring in Cortez Smith, it's going to be the same thing. Elias Williams, same thing. If you're talented, you're talented. Those are the best players you have. The fact that they're young means that some of your older guys are not as good as you thought they were. The fact that you can have 2 freshmen come in and take over. Where's Jamal Merriweather? We thought he was the next guy. We thought Daniel Calhoun, Bo Hewley. We thought these were going to be the guys. They're players who are better than them, who have been here longer. If it's just about experience, then they'd be the better players, but they're not as good as the younger guys. So, yeah, and the young guys can make mistakes. In other words, it's not one or the other. But I'm just telling you, a lot of it is, guys not who just you don't have. Who's your difference maker on defense? Who changes the outcome of a game? Quintavious Johnson did in one drive, and he had the same against either Auburn or Tennessee. There was one drive where he made like 3 plays, but he does that back-to-back plays, and you're like, number 33 is the guy. Oh, Gabe Harris makes a good play here, but the rest of the time you don't hear about it. But when Roquan's out there, it's over and over and over again. When Jordan Davis is out there, it's over and over and over again. When Jalen Walker's out there playing Texas, it's over and over and over again. I don't know that you have a legit – who do you fear on that defense? Who do you scheme away from?
Yeah, I think the closest thing would probably be – I guess you could maybe say Kristen Miller. You could maybe say CJ Allen with it, like second half of the Auburn game. He played fantastic, but like you said, he's not great in coverage. So how do you attack CJ Allen? You get him in mismatches and throw at him. So yeah, it's definitely not a difference making, but like I still just I can't come to grips. Like I still have to think that a Kirby Smart defense is going to get a little bit better than what they've been. Like I can't wrap my head around the fact that they will struggle this much all year. But then again, I've said it 1,000 times. And also we're 7 games into the year now. They have 8 conference games and Georgia Tech. You got 9 games against Power 4 or 5, whatever teams. You played 5 of them. That's over half. And this is what they've shown so far. Maybe they are this bad. And
that's my point. They are. Like, you guys know I'm optimistic, but sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
I was just gonna say, it's weird because feels like we hadn't said a positive thing in the 20 minutes we've been on the show. Georgia won. They're 6-1. They had a top.
It was a long show. We got room.
Yeah, but it's this team is focused on longer goals in the bigger picture, and I think it's going to take maybe not even drastic, but definitely some decently significant improvement on defense to get to this team's ultimate goals. I don't know if they've got it in them. This might just because here's the thing. Okay, you don't think your guys can play man because they'll give up big plays. Okay, they play zone. Well, what do you do when you play zone? You give up short passes. You allow guys to catch it, and that was Brent or Dane or somebody sent the stats in the message the other day. Chambliss was lights out throwing against zone. So okay, you throw against man, you open yourself up to pass interference penalties. You open yourself up to guys making one-on-one plays on the ball, which is something the Georgia defensive backs hadn't exactly lit it up on. So there's no perfect answer right now. And by the way, another week without a ton of pass rush, which would help a lot as well, by the way. But yeah, I think.
But that goes to my thing. But who do you fear over there? Who is the guy you would have to adjust for? Devontae Wyatt, a Jalen Carter, a Jordan Davis, an elite pass rusher or an elite defensive lineman. Now, Christian Miller can make some big plays. He grades out really well. Actually, one of the highest graded defensive linemen there, but can't do it by himself. When you can, and we're going to have two guys on him just about every time. But as for them getting better, there's a lot of experience there. They get so many reps in the in practice, and I guess here's why I'm not as optimistic. A lot of people are like, because we sell hope. We let people know that here's the next guy that's coming in. Here's why things can get better. Before the Auburn game, I talked to somebody who was at practice, and he said that the scout team was going third down. The scout team's running third downs against Georgia's starting defense. So the scout team went 7 of 7 converting third downs. Now, that's not good. So it's happening in practice too. It's not just at the game. So if your scout team can do that, yes, the younger guys will get better. Absolutely. But it might not be until next year.
And you, because
these guys aren't all of a sudden learn how to cover, But they did. Well, not thinking about it. Now, we did say that they needed to force some turnovers. They spent extra time on it, and Kirby was so resentful of giving up his 7 or 8 minutes in practice because remember, they're very limited in how much time they can practice. So let's say it's 2 hours on a Monday, 2 hours on a Tuesday. He has it from 0.00 to 2.00.00 planned out. That's why he wants that extra football field so they can go get a little bit more time in instead of switching fields. And they work on forcing fumbles and protecting the ball. Georgia was giving up the ball too many times. You had Nate Frazier's fumble issues, and Georgia wasn't forcing any. They basically doubled the amount of, the drills where they work on ball security and forcing fumbles. They made them do it twice as much. Now, that's not something you need to teach 2 times because, you put your first grade football players through it, your second graders, your third graders, all the way through high school, through college, you practice forcing fumbles and protecting the ball. And Kirby has a period that's devoted just to turnovers. They doubled that period. And then all of a sudden they started getting better results. So maybe, and let's give credit where due, this is a good tackling team. They make tackles. They don't miss as many. There were a few in this one that were frustrating. That drove Kirby crazy when he came off the field. They asked, what you haven't stopped them. He's like, we got to make the tackles when we have them. There's a couple of times we would have gotten off the field with, on a third down. We'd made the tackle. But overall, they're not as bad as they were last year on missed tackles. But they did work extra on ball security and forcing fumbles, and we've seen that in the last few games. Hey, there's some forced fumbles. Maybe they work a little bit more on their coverage skills, and instead of doing some of their other stuff, they go back, especially in this bye week. Let's work more on these coverage drills and assignments. So maybe we will see it. Maybe I shouldn't be so pessimistic, but just the stuff I'm hearing from inside the program does not have me optimistic about the future of the defense. But man, I am bullish bullish on the offense.
Yeah, because what did we say at the beginning of the year? It seems like this team could get better as the year goes along, and I think that mainly centered on the offense. And every week, Gunnar Stockton is getting better. He
Yeah.
had what, six? I got the stats pulled up. He had 5 incompletions, and he had 5 total touchdowns when you count his rushing touchdown. I mean, how many times? I mean, of those 5 incompletions, what, probably 2 or 3 were throwaways. I mean, just never even had a chance. I mean, he's not putting the ball in danger, which we all know is very important to Kirby Smart. We can just assume he is making the right checks at the line of scrimmage, getting the team in the right players. Although we obviously can't know that for sure. And he's just a there's no way to say this without bringing in a cliche. He's just a dog. Like you watch him and you can just sense on TV like how the team rallies around him, how much they love. I mean, Kirby said it after the game. He didn't practice Monday and Tuesday, and Kirby and Bobo were like, "Yeah, I don't know, dude. We're not going with quarterback run game this week as much." And Gunnar said, "No, I am going to play and I am going to run it." And one of the plays of that first half, it's a 22-yard keeper on his own read, where not only does he make the right read, he shakes a linebacker out of his shoes.
That was embarrassing.
Outruns a safety. Like, I mean, what else can you say about the kid? Now there were some plays, like I think it was right at the end of the first half. It looked like he had Lawson Lucky over the middle and London Humphreys down the sideline. Both guys were open. He didn't see it. The first half, he had Delp down the seam and didn't see it, although I think he got pressured. So yeah, he's not perfect in that regard, and no quarterback's perfect at all. But I don't think you can. I mean, if you well, I don't know what his season stats are to this point exactly, but if you showed him to Georgia fans before the year started and said, "Hey, he's got like 7 or 8 rushing touchdowns," like I don't think any of us
7.
Yeah, we thought he could make plays with his legs, but I mean, he's one of the top guys probably in the country in rushing touchdowns. Like, I don't know what more you could have asked for realistically. I mean, the other day, Colby Young essentially didn't play the entire game. He gets hurt on the third play, whatever that flea flicker was, and they still rolled up 500 whatever yards of offense and all that. It's just Gunnar Stockton this is fully his team. There's no doubt about it, and he is playing at a very high level. And given what we've seen, they're going to need him to keep playing at a high level the rest of the year. Now, I did see in the comments over here, I forget who said it, but Georgia's played really good offenses. Ole Miss's offense is really good. Tennessee's is really good. Alabama, you got them kind of A, coming off a bye, but B, right as they are starting to peak. I mean, they're playing as good as anybody in the country right now. So I don't think any of the offenses you're going to face the last 5 games are as good as what you've seen so far. I think you could say Texas has the potential to be, but they scored 13 points against Kentucky or 16 points, whatever it was. So, yeah, the offense, the year so far, I think has been best case scenario for what Georgia fans could have expected out of the offense coming into the year.
To answer your question, I was looking over the quarterback rushing TDs. Haynes King has 10 at Georgia Tech. That's not surprising. And the Army guy, the Air Force guy, the Navy guy, they all have like 10, 9, and 8. But when you start looking into actual, P4 schools with quarterbacks with 7 rushing touchdowns, there ain't many. Tulane, Texas State, and again, there's not P4, but just saying that's running back. Yeah, I mean, he's right up there. Gunnar Stockton,
And
7. So
off the top of my
and he
head,
also has 10 passing touchdowns. So
how many of those have been quarterback sneaks from the 1-yard line? Any? Maybe 1?
yeah, he's not really.
They've been reads. They've been. I mean, the one the other day was 22-yarders. Several of them have been between 8 and 15, where he outruns some guys. Like it's very impressive stuff. And there have been games like the Alabama game, we didn't see much quarterback run. Auburn, we didn't see a ton of it. Even the other day, it didn't it doesn't feel like we saw a ton of it. I think the bye week is coming at a great time for Gunner to get healthy. He takes a lot of hits, man. Like it wears on you. And again, it's a bye week that comes at a good time, but it's again, I think it's amazing because Gunner, it feels like he's already cementing himself as like an all-time like fan favorite just from how he plays, just because of the sheer cojones he has. I mean, you've got 2nd and 12 there in the fourth quarter, and he throws as pretty a deep ball as you'll ever see to Dylan Bell, who makes a fantastic catch. But like, what is it about Gunnar Stockton where it's like, all right, fourth quarter, it's time to get real, and he throws a perfect deep ball.
Well, I mean, but he plays that way right off the bat. I mean, he did the same pass. He throws a double move on first play of the game to Colby Young down the sideline. It's like he's ready to play. And a lot of times you kind of get your quarterback into it, a couple easy passes, a couple of handoffs, let them kind of get used to the speed of the opposing defense. And you're kind of feeling the defense out, seeing what they're lining up in, what are their checks to your checks. And, the first few drives are a lot of times they're just, I don't call them assessment drives, but you are gaining a ton of information about how this game is going to go. You get your guys to the sideline, you talk to your offensive lineman. Can you get your guy? Do you need help? The wide receivers come to the sideline. Oh, I got my guy. Yeah, give me this route. Give me this play. I got him. And they're just ready to go from stage one. And you're right. In the fourth quarter, it's just so let me address real quick the fact that about him not practicing last week. We had somebody come on the board and say, hey, I'm hearing something about the quarterback. This was Thursday. And I'm like, okay. And I started digging into it and found out he practiced Thursday. So we're like, well, I don't know what you were hearing, dude, but Gunner's fine. He's like, no, there's something going on with his obliques, and he's not fine. I'm like, so I started asking around to find out, well, someone said, well, he didn't practice. They let him have some time off on Monday. Okay. Then someone else said Tuesday. And I'm like, okay, this sounds like a bad kind of game of telephone where everybody's got a little piece of information and everyone's kind of filling it out. And I could see him not practicing on Tuesday simply because that's your good on good period. You don't let your quarterbacks get hit. But at the same time, guys sometimes get blocked into a quarterback or they don't pull up in time. So if your quarterback's feeling a little gimpy from the week before, you don't let him take any chances. Did not realize that, Kirk comes out and says he didn't practice Monday or Tuesday. I'm like, oh, okay. And then now the whole thing about we weren't sure we were going to have him, it wasn't that bad. That's kind of feeding into the myth there. But you let your guys who take hits like that take some time off. If I'm Kirby, I let him have the whole damn week off. If he's going to get 5 touchdowns with Monday and Tuesday off, what can he do against Florida if he's rested? I'm like, so you don't have to practice. You just show up. But again, that's my point. He's always ready. And there were so many people questioning him, and as well you should. I mean, there was not a lot of confidence after games 1 and 2. It's not like he was fired in downfield. Remember, game 3, we're like, the question wasn't will he throw it downfield? It was can he? And I'm like, yes, we've seen him do it. Have you been to a G-Day? Did you see the Notre Dame game? Did you ever go to Tiger, Georgia, and watch this kid cut it loose? I mean, he can throw. And it started becoming, well, he just he's a game manager. I'm like, no. And give Coach Donnan credit. About 3 or 4 weeks ago on our Tuesday show, he basically did the equivalent of standing up on the table for his guy, saying, "Look, I have been in this game 60 some odd years. I will take him as one of my first quarterback picks." Like, shit. And he basically, coach did the same thing about Stetson Bennett. Remember when he came in for JT Daniels, everybody wanted JT to come back. And he's like, no, you don't understand. This guy is a baller. And I can tell you this, there are NFL head coaches that reach out to Coach Donnan all the time and ask him about quarterbacks. If there's ever a handicapper for picking, assessing quarterbacks and their abilities, everybody in the country loves to pick Coach Donnan's brain. And he said, Gunner has it. And I'm like, okay. And again, I'm never going to doubt him, but I'm like, okay, coach. I mean, I'll defend him too, but he's got to do it when the lights run. And when's he going to look comfortable? God, he looks comfortable now. He really does. When you talk about him taking off and running and, juking people out and running through people and his pass. Now, he did have a lot more time to throw, and against the 3-man rush, I don't know what the hell Ole Miss was thinking there. Just rush 3, drop 5, and hope that that he won't make a completion or he won't get it open. Or that was a blunder to me. Now Georgia, I think, should just rush 3 and drop 5. I'd be fine with that. But
might as well.
I was like, I don't get this this approach. You're just going to let him pick his poison because he's got you see him fire the ball in there a couple weeks ago. He was throwing it too hard. It's like, whoa, take some off. And I do like the fact that in the Auburn game, they went to the tight ends 9 times and only had 3 completions. So I thought, okay, they're not going to try to force it to the tight ends again this week. Well, with Brock Williams in the stands, one of the top tight ends in the nation, they went to the tight ends. So I'm loving Georgia's running game, the way the offensive line was blocking. We'll talk about the run game in a second, but the passes, feeding Zachariah Branch repeatedly, going to Noah Thomas or Colby Young for your bigger plays, or like you said, Dylan Bell, and then just feeding those tight ends. Lawson Lucky, 3 TDs. Hasn't been done since Muhammad Massaquoi. That's rare air, man.
Yeah, that's Cleveland Browns legend Muhammad Massaquoi to you, but yeah, like
my all-time favorites, baby.
We've been waiting for it, and there it was, and it was kind of a variety of things. It's funny, like Delp or Lucky, how many yards? Like he had 0 yards after catch on his touchdowns because he was in the end zone on all of them when he caught them. And Delp, they made a habit out of getting Delp on these. It's the hard play action, toward the left, and then Delp comes across under to the right, and it's if you can make a team respect your run game, that's the stuff that opens up. And the run game was over 200 yards again, I think. 221 yards, 4.5 yards a carry.
I was going to ask how many 4.5 yards a carry.
I mean, that's counting kneel downs too, which obviously is a loss of 1. And then again, the Cash Jones incident that went down as a rush. So you're probably a little closer to 5 on actual run trades. I want to give a shout out to Nate Frazier because even in I don't know if it was the spring or preseason camp, Mike Bobo was like, yeah, we need him to get the dirty yards and push the pile and all that kind of stuff. He got a lot of dirty yards on Saturday because he turning 3-yard gains into 5-yard gains, turning 1-yard gains into 4-yard gains. All that stuff adds up. And he did a fantastic job. I think he's responded really well, it seems like, since that Alabama game, since the fumble. Chauncey Bowens continued doing what he does. And obviously you had what Gunner does with his legs too. And we still haven't really seen Dwight Phillips in a few weeks. It seems like he's had some nagging stuff. A couple weeks to get him back healthier. And that's huge too. And then speaking of huge, play of the game is Josh McCray on that 4th and 1, where as soon as he disappeared in that pile, everybody in the press box thought it's over. And
going the opposite direction, first down Ole Miss.
Rewatching it last night, the left side of the line gets destroyed. Monroe Freeling gets tossed into the pile, and McCray just kept his legs turning and fell forward. That's why you bring in a guy like that, and that's a guy that even Chauncey Bowens isn't quite that big and just can push like that. And that's what Josh McCray has brought. He did it against Tennessee. He doesn't have a ton of carries, doesn't have a ton of yards, but he makes them count when he gets in. Even if they don't go for a bunch of yards, they're very impactful on the game. And that was if Georgia gets stopped. I can't remember if they were down 9 or down 2 at that point, but if they're stopped there, it's very likely a different story on the outcome.
No, that was I think the play before they kind of got stoned. So you got to think about it. If you're Josh McCray, you were the leading running back when you left. You get here, then Chauncey Bowens blows up. Nate Frazier is obviously the guy. He gets behind the 8-ball with a little issue that he had when he got here. When the real story about that comes out one day, it'll be very funny. Well, not funny, maybe it'll be very interesting. But just glad that he's out there doing his thing now. And when I see number 2 in the backfield, I'm like, okay, somebody's gonna get up with a new bruise He was, when they say he's a bruiser, he leaves bruises in his wake. And that dude, remember that score he had on the goal line a while back, just thing of beauty. He pushes people forward, and that was one of Georgia's issues last year. A lot of times they couldn't get 3rd and 1, they couldn't get 4th and 1. And Rod Robinson was supposed to be that guy, and he's dressing out now. But McCray is getting it done. Nate Frazier, and now he's not fumbling, and he's running, like you said, those hard yards. And you saw how happy he was when he got his score. That is a new era from this year to last year when it comes to running the ball. Chauncey Bowens, you get excited to see 33 back there. It's like, look, these guys are going to run off tackle. They're going to run it around the edge. They're going to run inside zone. We're going to run. Georgia's running power. They're running counters, and they're just mauling people. And somebody did point out earlier about when I was ripping on the defense. The defense is fantastic against the run. That's what I'm talking about, the tackling. When they can get to, every time a team hands it off, I'm like, okay, I can relax now. And nobody's run on this team. And when Georgia hands it off, I'm like, okay, well, let's see what's going to happen here. Now, they're not all going to work, but by the end, you're just getting chunk plays. And Georgia can get on those 8-minute, 45-second death marches because you can keep the chains moving on the ground. And, a lot of people want to compare, Carson Beck to Gunnar Stockton. It was a bad night for Carson Beck last Friday night, 4 interceptions. Gunnar still through 7 games has 1 interception. Mm-hmm. So if you're protecting the ball and you're able to run it, and then you're able to hit explosives. Now, losing Colby Young is a huge blow. That's
sure.
Tough. That is tough. But I'm with you. We talked about guys getting better. Chauncey Bowens has gotten a lot better. I saw Chauncey last year, especially like the 2 G-Day games he played in. I'm like, this is a guy who does all the work, and they basically only reward him during G-Days because he's not as good as your feature backs. He's not that – he's the Dejon Edwards, to your Kenny McIntosh type guy. It's like, he's our 3rd string guy. He'll come in then, but now he's made himself into a top back. And then you got the same thing with Nate Frazier. That's a 1-2 punch. And then if you're going to bring in Peanut, if he gets healthy, that's strong. But you can also hand it to Dylan Bell, or around the edge. And then here comes Josh McCray. It's inside the 10. And if it's 1st and goal from the 9, you'll hear Coach lose his mind about it's just the worst part to be. He'd rather be on the 11 so he get a chance for a 1st down than the 9 because it's so hard to bang it in from there. But I'm like, oh, on the 9, to me, give it to McCray 3 times. Let's see what happens. He is a power dynamic. He changes it. So you got complementary weapons on the edges. You got the complementary weapons in the backfield. And I think we need to talk a little bit about that offensive line. That this was only the 2nd time the offensive line actually had the same lineup as at least one point earlier in the season. They had the same lineup they did for Tennessee. And they kept Gunnar Stockton upright. They pulled and hit blocks. Occasionally, missed block here or there. But, you're going to have that over the course of the game. But what I thought was very interesting was when they took Micah Morris out, and I'm assuming just to give him a breather, and they moved Dontrell Glover over, and you had Juan Gaston, Dontrell Glover as your 2 guards with Monroe Freeling and Ernest Green at the tackle spots, and Mr. Reliable Drew Bobo in the middle. That's a beefy line that pushed people around. That's not to say that Micah Morris can't do it, but it's tough when you're Micah Morris's size to go off 65 plays a game. What if you only need him to go off 40 plays a game?
Mm-hmm.
Because you got another guy who can do it.
It's like a reliever in baseball, right? Like, okay, if you're a starter, I can't really use everything in the tank. In the 1st innings, I got to go 7-8 innings. If you're a reliever, you come in throwing gas, and you're throwing 20, 25 pitches, whether you get 3 outs or whether you get 3 balls hit to the moon. And Drew Bobo's going to play every snap, but outside of that, you've got enough mixing and matching to give guys breathers when you need to. You can throw Bo Hewley in at left tackle for a series if you want to. You could move. I mean, I don't think, and part of this is he hasn't done it like a ton because the offensive line had been healthy. But not only is Juan Gaston playing as a true freshman, which is wild as it is, he's playing tackle and guard. And swapping between the two on drives, which is just
as a freshman,
so ridiculous, just absurd. And Dontrell Glover is playing as not just a true freshman, a guy who didn't get here till the summer. Like,
didn't even have spring practice.
It never in it. Like, there's no way any of us of the Georgia staff would have been like, yeah. You tell them, okay, you're gonna start 2 true freshmen, and you're not going to get a whole lot out of Ernest Green at least through the first 7 games, and your offensive, and that's what we not this you can't even necessarily attribute this to Gunnar Stockton, but when we talk about guys playing for the guys around him and Gunnar kind of elevating his teammates, maybe that's happening with the offensive line, because on paper, this offensive line definitely isn't his experience, and probably just looking at sheets of paper, if those even exist in the world anymore, probably shouldn't be as good. Last year's offensive line has 2 NFL starters on it. It had
and 2 guys that were drafted. I mean, 2 more that were drafted. So it's funny you say that.
You got 2 true freshmen. You got a guy who a lot of people didn't necessarily even think should have been a take at Georgia, and Drew Bobo, and you've got a guy in Monroe Freeling that half the fan base gave up on after the Notre Dame game, and it's working right now. For whatever reason, it's all clicking, and they're starting to get a little bit healthy. The bye week comes at a good time for those guys, and we'll see what it looks like against a Florida team that, they fired their coach and whatever. That defense is nasty. The defensive front that Florida's got is nasty. So it'll be another big test in Jacksonville. But it right now it seems like Georgia's up for the task, at least from what we've seen so far.
Yeah, Coach Hayes, y'all follow him on Coach Hayes Huddle. He points out he'd like to see Big McCray, the pistol there. Did you guys see McCray come in as a fullback?
Mm-hmm.
That's like Kirby. I mean, Mike going a little old school, man. Let's go a little I formation. It's like, and hey, you still have that option. You still can run the option to the edge with Gunnar. I'm like, man, and teams aren't used to it, and they've run it once or twice. And I'm like, let's there's a reason that fullbacks and the option game ruled football for decades, because it's damn good football, It's a coach. Now, this is an actual coach, folks, so it's not just me prattling off at the mouth. He said, I love it in the I formation. Yeah, absolutely. It was I'm with you there. And that offensive line, you talk about the guys that were drafted last year when you had Micah and Tate Ratledge as the guards, and you could bring in Dylan Fairchild. That's what I thought. This offensive line is just going to match. Jared Wilson, fastest center we've ever seen. And you see how fast Drew Bobo is now. He's gotten a lot faster pulling. So, but I thought that you would be able to rest one of those 2 guys and bring in Dylan Fairchild. But then, they all got injured. Year 2 or the next year, when Georgia has to put in Bo Hewley on one side and Daniel Calhoun, and you're having to play true freshmen, because some guys got injured. They grew up pretty damn quick. Mm-hmm. Now they are maulers. And Monroe Freeling 2 weeks ago wins Offensive Lineman of the Year on one day. Of the week on 1 foot. And you now realize how much it hurt Georgia to lose Ernest Green. Mm-hmm. You start doing it. You're not all of a sudden. Guess what happens when you don't have to keep your tight ends in to help with blocking? They're open to go out and get passes. You get a tight end for free. It's funny how the spirals up, the complements build on each other. Like you said, the run game opens up all the passing. And on defense, the exact opposite. When you can't pressure the quarterback, it puts so much pressure on your secondary, and vice versa. It's like, oh man, this is so should be very excited. I'm glad to see the offensive line get the credit they deserve. A lot of people having to delete some tweets about Stacy Searles. I don't think you should delete it. I mean, when they didn't perform, yeah, you can call out the players and call out the coach. When they did perform, you got to give them credit as well. So there were some boneheaded play calls earlier in the year. The couple times they were out-coached, I called that. And then when they out-coached the other team, Mike Bobo ran circles around that defense. There's no question there. And Lane Kiffin had Glenn Schumann on the ropes. You know, I don't know what's going to happen at the end of the season, but I'm thinking you need an infusion of some of these coaches that are being fired need to come to Georgia. And I think you need your Will Muschamp back. You need that, like Brandon Streeter so good coming in and helping Georgia with his quarterbacks. You know, the guy who was an offensive coordinator at, Clemson. Streeter is one of the best recruiters in the country. God knows QBs. Having him on staff doesn't hurt. Having Will Muschamp in the room doesn't hurt. If you want to have some of these coaches that are losing their jobs come to Athens and, they'll still be paid by the college they're at. They'll still make their millions. And, I think when Mike Bobo came here, they were giving him, 150,000, something, six figures, but not much because he was still getting, I think, a check from Auburn. Get those guys in here and help you out on defense. You hit the transfer. You went over in the transfer portal on the safeties, but you did pretty good with Josh Horton.
Yeah, game ceiling play anyway with the one at the end. And he played. Rewatching it, he played a lot. He's seems like he's getting more and more snaps every week. And we've talked about the Langston Hughes pipeline with Dontrell Glover and Bo Hughley. Josh Horton went there too. And Kelsey Adams. 2027 kids from Langston Hughes. Georgia's building a pipeline at a really, really good program in Atlanta for sure.
Yeah, Richard Cooley says, I love me some Aiken. I can never say it. He's from Warner Roberts. He's seen a good bit of Gibson. I think he's destined for greatness. And Chase Linton is his dark horse and may have a surprising impact. Yeah. And Chris points out that Quintavious Johnson had some pass rush that he didn't earlier in the year. So that is that kind of development coming on. So I shouldn't be so hard on him, but at this point, I'm like, if these young wide receivers and young offensive linemen can get it done, then these other guys playing defense, whereas, some of that is even just more instinctual than it is on offense. Offense, you have to play proper technique or you're going to get your ass kicked. Look, just let these guys come in. And we've seen true freshmen come in and make big impacts. So, Georgia did sign a hell of a recruiting class. We just haven't seen that as many impact guys. Elijah Griffin played a good bit. I'm with you there. He can be that disruptor, but I think that Josh Horton might need a few more snaps because it was funny about midway through the second, third quarter. I'm like, when's the last time Georgia knocked down a pass? Because when I wrote my column on Friday, and I know you didn't read it, Jed, because you never do. I said, look,
Friday night.
Yeah. I said, this offense is coming in. Georgia has made every team that they faced in the first quarter look, amazing, or first half. And through the first three SEC games, the opponents were completing 70% of their passes against Georgia. And then they faced Jackson Arnold, who went 74%. So plus 70% for all four SEC games. And I'm like, here comes a guy who's got the number 8 passing offense in the nation going up against the number 86 passing defense in the nation. And in the first half, Georgia's actually 130 out of 136, 138 teams. It's not a lot.
36.
So, yeah, I think out of 136, Georgia's 130th in the first half. The second half, much better. But in the first half, Georgia's passing defense is god-awful. And sure enough, Trinidad Chambliss comes in and completes 70% of his passes. So my actual closing comment on that section of my column was Georgia needs some tipped passes or overthrows or drop passes. Basically, Georgia at this point has to rely on the other team screwing up. And we didn't see that for 5 drives. So I think about third or fourth drive, I'm like, can somebody just tip a damn ball? Can we just get a batted ball at the line? And I tweeted it out, and then not 10 minutes later, then McLeod goes my replies just lit up. They're like, you talked it into existence. I'm like, and a lot of them are like, you said that, but there it is. I'm like, well, it hadn't happened until the last half of the third quarter. But again, that's something that you can teach and work on so that next week against, or 2 weeks against Florida, you do that to DJ Lagway, you do that to Arch Manning, you knock down some of those passes, and one of them's going to be tipped and go the other way. Georgia eventually has to get at least one turnover on a short field. It feels like it has been a minute since, and if you do that with Gunnar Stockton at the helm, he's going to punch it into the end zone. So, or Chauncey Bowens is going to, or Nate Frazier's going to, or Lawson Lucky's going to. So, I also want to give a little credit to the. I was ripping on the guys getting so many pass interference calls, but that offensive line, they've had so few holding calls and illegal procedures, and there's been occasional, illegal man downfield, but that's because of an RPO when, you've got that count in your head. And if you don't see the ball go downfield, then to release up the field and start blocking because you figure that, it's a run. And so there have been a few of those where Georgia keeps it a little long and then throws it and they get flagged for it. But that's not an offensive lineman's fault. But that is for a group that has been changed in and out repeatedly and 2 road games. They are not getting called for a lot of stuff. I hope I didn't just jinx them, Jed. But
yeah, and it hasn't been a lot of Auburn and Tennessee, I think, no procedural calls. I'm trying to think if there were any the other day. Like I don't remember any illegal formation, guy lining up off the line of scrimmage, anything like that, which that's usually more of a receiver thing anyway. But
well, a lot of times you get that tackle. That's what happened the other day.
Yeah, that's it's been if you this year, this offensive year, I think has really been as much as Georgia fans could realistically hope for. Again, especially when you go into the year and you're like, oh God, like what? After the first couple of weeks anyway, where it's so much banged up and there's freshmen starting and Bo Hewley's getting extensive playing time for the first time and all this kind of stuff, like, and you had a new quarterback and all this stuff, new center. And it's as good. Yeah. Could Georgia be scoring 48 points a game? Like, or is Georgia scoring 48 points a game like the Aaron Murray years? No. But if you expected that coming into this year, then, that's a you problem. I think this offense is, if this offense hadn't played, this offense won the games against Tennessee and Ole Miss for you. Let's call it what it is. If this offense didn't play pretty much, literally lights out the entire game the other day. And for most of the game against Tennessee, you had 3 losses in the SEC, and the sky would be falling over Sanford State. They have it. This offense has won you a couple games, and obviously had some success in the second half, especially against Auburn as well. So again, I think this has been about all Georgia fans realistically could have pulled 4 through 7 weeks. They got to keep getting better. There is stuff to get better at, but it's going about as well as you could hope so far, I would say.
Yeah, I'm with you. Early on in the season, I think it was like the second week of practice, Coach Donner warned everybody, he's like, look, college football is different. We are not as talented as we used to be because, and his whole thing wasn't, well, everyone wants to point to NIL. Well, it's not like Georgia players aren't getting paid a lot of money. They are. And a lot of people want to point to the portal, which is true. Somebody in the comment section earlier was talking about missing out on Damon Wilson. Actually, Jay, that's a good story we need to do this week, is kind of look at the guys around the country who are not at Georgia and how they've fared halfway through the season. Kind of our mid-season report would be a good one of, who all could still be on Georgia's squad. Now, we can also point out how well Georgia's transfers in are doing. Go back to that Auburn game, you had 16 catches from transfer wide receivers. That's pretty damn good. So they've hit on their receivers, they missed on their safeties, but that's pretty stinking good. But Coach pointed out, he said a lot of the guys that are transferring are doing so for playing time. And you just can't have guys ride the bench. They'd rather be a starter at a school with maybe a little less history or a little less, you know, title chances, but they get to be the starter. Plus, they get paid versus staying at Georgia and having to wait their turn or get developed. So he just pointed out that these games are going to be a lot more nip and tuck. And I'm like, I nod my head, and I agree with him. I mean, the guy's he forgot more about football today than I've known my whole life. But I was like, I did not realize how prophetic that was going to be. That Tennessee game comes down to, like you said, that's you needed every point that your offense could give you. It goes to overtime, third P4 game in a row or something. That was goes into overtime. The Auburn game was super tight. Georgia holds them to 10 because they fall apart after they fumble it, but those first few drives down the field, they're just kicking your ass. This game, you needed every point you could get from your offense, and just felt like there was nothing you could do to really get ahead. And then Georgia winds up scoring 17 unanswered, 20 unanswered at Auburn. I'm thinking the Texas isn't going to play as bad as they did last week. Florida now, they'll be under a new coach.
Mm-hmm.
I hate it when a team fires their coach before they play you.
Especially with a bye week.
Those sons of bitches always rally. It always happens.
And if you're Florida, I mean, what do you have to lose coming into this game? You've lost what?
Oh yeah, you go all out,
games. Man. I mean, and I don't know what. I mean, they play Florida State. But Florida State season's cooked too. So if you're Florida, I mean, this is kind of like, and I don't want to say it's their Super Bowl because that's a cliche too. But you've got a chance to really throw a wrench in a big rival season, and you've got nothing to play for. People have been telling you stink for. I mean, they got booed after a win the other day. How bad does that feel? You got booed at home after a conference win. So they've got nothing to play for, nothing to lose, everything to play for, everything to gain.
Right.
And that game's always weird.
And you got a coach who would like to put his hat in the ring for a job.
Yeah, I mean, it's one that it's weird to say, but I almost feel like Georgia fans would and should be more confident if Billy Napier was still there. As weird as
I was like, let the loss, and I think part of it was we don't want to lose to Georgia and fire them after that one. We don't want to give those sons of bitches the satisfaction of saying they've got our coach fired.
Yeah, for sure.
I'm speculating there because it seems odd to fire a coach after a win.
Unless
Texas A&M did as well too.
Unless you're just predetermined, hey, we're going to do it going into the bye. I don't know if this is I would imagine it's their second bye. I don't know for sure, but if you figure, hey, we're going to give the interim guy 2 weeks to get it rolling before our next game, that would be.
Yeah, that would make sense. I'm probably just speculating because I know how ugly this rivalry is, and it could be the spark. I mean, you get the other team thinking, oh, well, they just lost their coach. We're just rolling our hats out there. Nothing comes easy. I mean, hell, Georgia struggled against the third-string walk-on QB last year.
Mm-hmm.
How many interceptions did we have in that game that Georgia threw? Because I think Georgia threw 3 and the other guy threw 2.
Yeah, there was at least 2 on back-to-back drives in the second quarter from Carson Beck that were both like, what are you looking at?
Yeah, it's just, I mean, it felt like there were a lot of turnovers in that game and then it was close a lot longer than it should be. So my point is weird things happen there. Then you're going to have Texas come to town. Yeah, they look bad. They have one of the lowest ranked games, offenses in the SEC. They'll need that Georgia game to save their season. So they're going to play it tough. Going to Mississippi State's no walk in the park. Tech's going to be undefeated when Georgia faces them. My point is, you're not out of the woods on these close games.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, especially and Tech. I mean, they you saw what they did last year. They shortened the game and run the ball and make every possession matter. And if you make one mistake, like we saw the other day, one mistake on one drive could be the difference in the game. Now, again, this Georgia defense has defended the run pretty well for the most part, but Auburn had some success, especially with the quarterback run early. So you just never know. But I think I think this team's got to keep getting better. I think they can. Like I still, like I said earlier, I don't know that this defense is going to be this bad all year long, but maybe they will be. But if they are, then this offense is going to need to keep getting better and keep playing at the level they've been playing at.
I think if they play DeMello Jones more, he'll get better. I think that might. I think it might be DeMello Jones's time. I think Daniel Harris is still on the team.
I saw him the other day. He is there.
See, you do have a guy with starting experience there. Maybe Adrian Maddox can step up. I mean, I think he was the guy that's set to go after Ja'Cory Thomas. So there are 3 transfers who are still learning to play Georgia's secondary, play safety spot. So maybe they can come in and make an impact. But I'm with you. I'm like I said, very bullish in Georgia's kicking game. I mean, we get a shout out to Peyton Woodring. Man, it's as frustrating it was to see the ball kicked out of bounds twice. Watched him drop, 3 field goals being just automatic.
Mm-hmm.
That's a thing of beauty too. So with these games being so nip and tuck, like I said, 1 possession, 1 catch being the difference here and there. The fact that teams, usually don't get a return against Georgia. You got a punter who, when he actually plays, gives up very few return yards because of his hang time. And the fact that you can flip the field, punt them deep, and then if you get close enough, you can knock in a field goal and you're not going to give up a big kick return. Sometimes that's going to be the difference. So if you take Rolaids or Tums or whatever when watching these games, go to Costco, get a big barrel full. If we do see the team improve, it's not going to be by leaps and bounds, but there's going to be some more tight games down the way. But Georgia still will be – they should be favored in every game going forward. Well, they should be favored in every game this year, haven't they been? Maybe someone said before the season started they would be favored in every game. They have been so far, and they should through the rest of the way. So, but it ain't going to be about much in some of these games. So.
Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome. All right, folks, that's all the time we have for this week's show. Man, we didn't even get to recruiting. It's too much to cover. But Georgia did get a commitment. Go ahead and tell them who it was in case people weren't paying attention.
Yeah, 2028 tight end Asa Wall. If that sounds familiar, it's the son of former Georgia fullback JT Wall, which makes me feel old because I remember him when I was a kid. So that's something I'm dealing with personally. But yeah, he's a guy that has kind of emerged this year as one of the top tight ends in 28. I think he's been at every home game, all the big ones anyway. So already well up Todd Hartley's priority list. I mean, if they will take you at this point as a sophomore, that kind of tells me all I need to know. So Georgia legacy, Todd Hartley, like you mentioned with Brock Williams earlier, a guy who sits there and watches the tight ends go off, and he's like, "Yep, I'm good." So yeah, another big pickup, first one in 2028. Georgia, Mississippi State are the only 2 teams in the SEC with 2028 commitments, and that's one where everybody says, "Oh, 2028 commitments, that's far out. Nobody cares." That's one where I think, and he said it in his tweet, I want to be a leader for this class. And you think back, Pierce Spurlin was a leader for his class, committed way early. Guys like that do stick every now and then. And I think Asa Wall is going to be one of those guys.
Dude is made from tough stock. His dad's one of the toughest players I've ever seen. Just a true battering ram made out of cast iron. That son of a bitch would just kill you. So that apple didn't fall far from the tree. So, and again, a legacy tight end. We saw a legacy tight end score 3 touchdowns this past week. So if the formula works, don't change it. Don't change the recipe. All right, folks, that's all we have for this week. We will see you later. Take care.